guys doing? My name's Matt Morton. I'm the composer for Apollo 11. I'm here. I'm here from all the way from Columbus, Ohio. Ohio is the state where Neil Armstrong was born. Jim Lovell, the Wright brothers, John Glenn, lots of, yeah. Well, welcome to this very special screening. This is so cool to be here on the evening of the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing. In a way, this film was made for this night. It was made also for the future as well, but it definitely came to light trying to celebrate this amazing event. It kind of started back, we did a film, the same group of filmmakers, we did a film called Dinosaur 13 about 5 years ago. And we had an opening night screening at Sundance. It got bought by Lionsgate and CNN Films. It went into theaters and it did all right, but when it got on TV, it did really well, and it ended up winning an Emmy for outstanding science and technology. Oh, thanks. It won an Emmy for outstanding science and technology programming. And so after that happened, CNN liked us. So they were like, what do you got for us next? So we were working actually on a feature at the time about a moon rock from Apollo 17 called the Goodwill moon rock, that parts of which it was broken into bits and kind of spread out amongst all of the countries on the planet at the time of the mission in 1972. And anyway, that's in the can, but we haven't finished that film. But what we did do for CNN is a short film about Apollo 17 called The Last Steps. And you can see that. It's on YouTube and Vimeo and whatnot. But we did that. Just like this film, it was all archival footage. So everything you saw was 1972 December footage. I think there was a press... some interviews before and after, but basically you were seeing 1972. So that was kind of a dry run for this film. Now I'm a composer, and for that score, I just kind of let myself use any instrument that I wanted to. If I wanted a modern drum beat, like a drum loop, I used it. If I wanted like a really lush digital reverb, I used it. And that was cool. There was this kind of juxtaposition between, that period footage and this really modern sound that you were hearing. But when we got the chance to do Apollo 11, I decided to only use instruments from 1969 or earlier. So I went out and in 2017, Moog announced that they were reissuing the synthesizer 3C, which is a 1968 basically version of Bob Moog's original modular. So I bought number 19 of 25. It's in my basement, hopefully doing well. And I also used a Mellotron, a modified Binson Echo Rec 2. That was restored and modified by Sound Gas Limited right here in Derbyshire. I also used an Echoplex EP2, a Hammond A100, and a Leslie 147, and a couple of old drum machines from Ace Tone and Maestro. But anyway, I don't want to get too nerdy on the music stuff, but yeah. I've got pages of notes on the film restoration, and like you're gonna see just beautiful 70 millimeter footage that no one had ever seen at this quality level. But I'm a music guy, so I'm here to kind of talk about my take on where I'm coming from with that. You know, when I found out I was going to score it, on the one hand, I was like, how do you put such a kind of momentous occasion into music? It's really kind of mind-blowing what that is when you really think about it. I wasn't a music major, I was an environmental studies major. And when you think about the fact that humans walked on another planet, I mean, in evolutionary terms and in terms of importance for living creatures and life in general, I put that right up there with, you know, the first marine creature to walk on the land. So, I mean, if we survive long enough, we don't destroy this planet, and we figure out how to become a multiplanetary species, we'll be looking back at July 20th, 1969, you know, for thousands and hopefully millions of years as our first big step off of the earth, and, you know. So I hope you hear that reverence for that event in my music, because I really tried to put a lot of respect for what was happening in there. I also put a lot of respect for the danger that these guys were under. These guys were getting on top of a 6.5 million pound missile. They just took the warhead off and put some guys on there instead, you know? Michael Collins, the mission, or the command module pilot, said there's 1,000 things in a delicate daisy chain that all had to happen perfectly for these guys to get back safe. I mean, very famously for Apollo 13, those guys, like, just barely made it back. They were lucky they had all those guys in mission control looking out for them. But anyway, these guys were, you know, these guys had the earlier versions of several things, and you can see it on their faces. One of the first times that we got a look at some of this 70 millimeter footage, you know, we just set out to try and rescan all of the existing 16 and 35 millimeter footage. All the 70 millimeter stuff was just a complete surprise. We got this email in May of 2017 from this, you know, usually archivists are very reserved folks. And so when we got an email from the head of the film division, the archivist, you know, in National Archives in Washington, D.C., with all these bold letters and exclamation points like, we just found all this amazing 70 millimeter footage, you gotta see it. So, like, we knew we had something big when that guy was freaking out. So we picked a couple of test reels, and those test reels, one of them was the suiting up footage that you'll see very early on, and then the other one was kind of the liftoff and staging. But when you look at this footage of these guys putting on their spacesuits, getting ready, thinking about what they're about to do in a couple hours, you can really see the weight on their shoulders and kind of what's going on in their heads. They filmed a suiting up rehearsal from a few days previous to that, and they're all kind of joking around and loose and, you know, feeling good. But when it came down to the day of it, you can see the weight on their shoulders, and actually you'll hear Walter Cronkite. You know, there's no narrator in the film. All you hear is some news coverage by Walter Cronkite, and then you hear the voices of NASA, who were kind of, you know, work for the public affairs office and were relaying all the data, you know, out to the public. And we found that we really didn't need anything more than that to tell the story. But they talk, you know, he says the burdens and the hopes of all mankind were riding on their shoulders. And I ended up naming that first cue after that. But I think you'll see that on there. So that's what I'm talking about with, you'll hear that the music is really kind of underlying the danger and also kind of the importance of the mission. I hope that's what comes away. I just wanted to say thanks on behalf of the whole film team to you guys for coming out, and the film's really had a really warm response in the UK, and I think it had a couple of weeks in IMAX. I'm not sure if it's in there still, but just wanted to thank you guys so much, and hope you enjoy the film. And actually, I think we're going to be able to take a couple of questions,
yes,
if anyone has them. So he has a microphone there.
Hi, I'm curious, with the control that you had over the music and the soundtrack for the film, did you also have much control when it came to the storyboarding process for how you were going to do the narrative?
Did I have much to do with the storyboarding process?
So of course, I guess the director the director would go ahead and sort of decide how they would show the footage and how they'd sort of create a narrative through that.
Actually, okay, if I understand you right, you're asking about kind of the interplay between me and the director and trying to decide what was going to go in the film and whatnot. We were kind of really flying by the seat of our pants, because the scanning process, the scanner that we used was it's actually the only scanner in the world, or at least it was at the time, that could scan at 16K, which is just insane. We ended up doing the film off of 8K scans, but even that process took a lot of firmware updates, like live on the spot. These guys were working in this small room in shifts, trying to get the scanner to work. So what I'm trying to say is, the scanning process went super late. So I ended up pre-scoring most of this. So we were at the mercy of, what's going to be on this reel? What's going to be on this reel? So the cut was changing up until the very last minute. I just had to use my knowledge of how an Apollo mission goes, and I was just making as much music as I could ahead of time, because I didn't have any footage to work with. So I was like, all right, they've got to suit up, they've got to have a countdown, they've got to have a liftoff and staging, a translunar injection, they've got to have some kind of montage on the way, they've got lunar orbit insertion, they've got to do a powered descent, they've got to do an EVA, they've got to do a lunar liftoff, they've got to do a trans-Earth injection. There's going to be some kind of TV transmission on the way back. Then there's going to be re-entry, and then there's going to be some kind of joyous Ewok ending at the end. So I was just trying to give him ammunition to work with, and so we did have interplay, but it was I didn't have any say over the edit, or really. I think I've worked with him forever. We actually grew up together. We had a rock band in high school, and he was the singer and I was the guitar player. So we've been creatively involved with each other for a lot of years. So we kind of trust each other, and we give and take, and it's kind of like a tennis ball hit over the net. Like each time the other guy adds something to it, and it affects what you do to it next. And so yeah, there's interplay, but ultimately he was the editor, and he did a brilliant job.
I think we've got another question.
Hello. There must have been hours and hours of footage that you made music for. Is there any particular piece of music that you wanted to appear in the film and it ended up on the cutting room floor?
I did do a lot. I mean, I felt like if you've ever seen footage of these astronauts, in the simulators or in these contraptions that try to make them puke, or, trying to test the limits of the equipment that they're going to be using, I did the same thing with the synths. I watched videos and whatnot, but nothing can prepare you for a Moog modular synth to show up at your door It came off a semi. The guy like pallet jacked it into my garage, and it came with a textbook that said Moog Modular Owner's Manual, and it's like, it looks like a 1950s, textbook. So I just went to school on it, and I did hours and hours and hours, probably days of music that didn't make it. What I would say, what didn't make the cut, all of the EVAs on the moon are completely without music. And that was a creative decision by the director. I did make a bunch of real spacey ambient music for the moon, just to kind of hoping that it would make it, but yeah, that didn't make it. But ultimately, I think the film is better for the fact that we didn't use that, because you get to just experience it completely clearly. You don't miss any dialogue or anything, and you experience it just like they did, just nice and quiet, not all Hollywooded up, which is kind of cool. Okay, we got to stop. Sorry, guys, but I'm going to stick around for the screening, so just grab me if you want to ask questions. I'll answer them as long as I can. I had a red eye last night, so I'm kind of tired, but I'll answer whatever you got. So I think we're going to roll the film, and I hope you guys like it. Apollo 11. Thank you.